Cool. Thank you.
So that's I think the quick background. I don't know if you have questions or anything. I can also jump into a demo or we can do whatever you prefer.
I think jumping into a demo would be great, and we'd like to see what you have, and then maybe we have questions on capabilities and things like that.
Yep, that sounds good. I can do a quick overview to give you a sense of it. I already sort of started describing it, but let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can you see that? All right, so I'm logged in and here I have a list of grant applications that I'm currently working on, or maybe some of these are past applications. I'm going to jump around just a little bit to try to show you things, useful things as efficiently as possible. So one thing I might do is if I'm coming in here initially, I might start with a new grant application. I can click up here. It asks me a few questions. Which version of the grant of the T32 tables am I using? This will allow us to update when the NIH changes their tables over time. You can use the version that you want, which is usually the latest. We have the ability for you to organize your grants within your organization and then within subgroups. So you can delegate and say who has the ability to view and modify grant applications for different groups within your institution. We can give it a name, indicate the due date, say if it's new, renewal, or revision. And as I start to fill out these fields, the system is going to take a educated guess about which tables I want to include. So if I do, for example, a postdoc grant, it's going to indicate these are the tables, but you can override that and decide if you want to use other ones. The system can generate the training tables as well as biosketches with all the data that goes into the system. So you can choose your biosketch format. We don't have a lot of biosketch formats in there right now, but we can always add more. You can also indicate the research organization, registry organization name if you'd like. And one of the things that that'll do is allow you to more easily or quickly search for things like publications and grants later when you get to that stage, and it will already know this information so that you don't have to put it in each time you're doing a search. So if I go ahead and press create, it'll generate a new grant. The system is broken into two main sections. On the left here, we have a way to manage the data that's going to be used to create the tables. And then on the right, it has a section where I can click and start viewing the tables that are being generated. As I update the data, the tables are automatically updated. And I have sort of the same concepts over on the left in this left navigation. Here are sections where I can manage data. Here are sections where I can view the tables as I'm navigating around the system. So initially, you might want to do something like start adding faculty members to your grant. When we do this, right now we have the ability to add faculty members manually. So and just start typing in information. And as you can see, we have relevant fields for all of the information that's required for T32 applications, as well as information that would typically show up on a biosketch. So you can just type all that information in. You probably don't want to type it all in, so we'll talk about some other options. But in addition to be able to type it in to create new records, you can also come here to edit or update or correct information if you'd like. So you can say their role in the program, whether or not they're participating, their primary appointment, and other departments and affiliations, and so forth. Let me think. Maybe I'll do a real person so that we can find some publications. That's if I
Can I
spelled
ask
it
real quick,
correctly.
does this page allow you to add their org ID?
Did you say they're like ORCID ID or ORC ID? We just started ORCID integration, so that's a field that we haven't added yet, but we will be adding soon. Yeah. So in addition to adding people manually, if we set up a data warehouse and integrate with your systems of record at your university, you could go here and it would show a list of faculty members. You could type in their name or their department and find the folks you want. Just check a box next to their name and hit import. And once you do that, it will pull in all the relevant information that your systems and therefore the data warehouse has about those folks. publications, grants, all those types of things. Another option is to import a list of faculty members from a CSV. These are also things that we're still working on. So we've been adding more. And if there are other ways that you'd like to be able to add people or add publications or add grants, you can just let us know and we can add more ways to get you to get that data in there. Once you've added some faculty members, one of the options is you can try to add all of the information about them. If you're a grant administrator, maybe that's your job. You have to go find all the information and put it in. Another option is that you can request that the faculty members enter and update their own information. So you can click this button and it'll allow you to send email to all of your faculty members. You can just check this box if you have 50 faculty members and hit send, and it will send an email to all of those faculty members with a link. They click the link, they can fill out the information either from scratch, or they can update or correct any of the information. They can submit that information and it automatically is populated into the system. So as you can see, we're just trying to find ways to make it easy to get this information into the system and then updated and corrected. So similar to faculty members, we have sections for other relevant information. You can go into your trainees and you can add trainees. Again, you can type in information about trainees. You can import from a CSV. If we set up a data warehouse and integrate with your systems of record, we can import from there. If you'd like to be able to get the data in another way, we can give you those options too. When it comes to things like publications, we have the same options. You can enter a publication from scratch just by typing, select from a data warehouse, import from a CSV. You can also do things like search PubMed and search ORCID from within the system. And
Adam, can we go back to that previous screen about the trainees
yes.
real fast? Okay, so does this have that same capability? You can email the trainee and they could fill it in?
Yes, we
Okay.
have just set that up for faculty, and in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to add that for trainees as well.
Okay. Okay.
So similarly, you can enter all the information about all the mentorships, publications, faculty members, and then once you have that information in place, and this grant doesn't have very much information. I don't really remember which one has more, but let me try something like this. Let's see if this is better. Once you've added some of that information, you can see here I have 11 departments, 7 faculty members, 25 applicants, 3 trainees. Then I can start looking at my tables, and it's going to generate these tables based on the information that we've entered in the previous screens. Again, you can go and update that information and it'll automatically be reflected here. So it'll count the total faculty, count participating faculty in each department and so forth. And we can go through one table at a time and see what information we have in here. So federal training grants, research support, and so forth. So in any of these tables, it's generated based on that data. One of the things that we've found in our experience working with these is people will often come to these tables and look at it and say, well, I'm not sure that's right. Or how do I know if that's right? So we've been adding ways to try to illuminate that. We're also open to more ideas. So if you guys think of other things that would be helpful, that's great. But for example, if you put your mouse over this number 2, it tells you the names of the 2 people it's counting. So you could say, oh, Kenneth Corkery it shouldn't be marked as participating, and you can go correct that. Or somebody's missing, you can figure out where's Susan Green, and now you know who's missing. In addition, we have a tab that's labeled data, and what this is it lets you sort of dig in and look in great detail at who is included and who is not included and why. So for example, that table 1 includes participating departments, 1 row for each participating department. So what we've done is we've gone through each department that's listed on the grant and shown whether or not they're participating. And if I click here, it will take me over to the department record and take me to the field that indicates whether or not it's participating. So if I think that that's wrong, I can come here and change it. So now this is not marked as participating. If I say it should be marked as participating, I click it, it takes me to the spot where I can fix it. So all of these go through and say, well, why isn't Michelle Green included? It's because she's not listed in a participating department. So I can kind of figure out and reason about that. Now, I know that's not information you normally want to be looking at, but as soon as you start working on these, I think you're going to find that it's frustrating if you can't find that out. In addition, we have a few other options on on the pages for each table like this. You can download it in Microsoft Word format. You can view the NIH instructions for this table. And finally, sometimes we know that the data that's being entered is great data, as good as it could possibly be, and it's not correct. So you always have the option to manually correct information directly in the table. So even if I only have one person listed as participating faculty in clinical pharmacology, I can always just come in here, click on the number, and change it to whatever I want. And when you do that, the system is going to highlight it so that you know that that's been manually modified, and that if you want it to automatically calculate, you can come in here, click the little thing and say, I want this to get the real number or the automatically calculated number and not the thing that somebody overwrote it with.
So, Adam, does it automatically, like for table, yeah, I guess for table one, does it automatically based on your faculty from table two, it will calculate all the pre-docs within those, 25. Okay, good. That's what I was wondering. Okay.
Yep.
Jennifer, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Yes, I did. For table two, I believe it is the one that where you list the faculty names and it says how many pre-docs, post-docs. Okay. My question for this one is, and this may be like I'm in dreaming fantasy land. But so how faculty usually want to give me this information is they send me their trainee CV. So I have this, 6-page thing, and then there's a section that says postdoc, blah, blah. Do you have the capability to like scan something like that in and have it go in? Like, sorry if that's fantasy world, but I just had to ask.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have not built that here in Curvita. We have built that type of functionality in other systems related to lab research. And what I'll say is whether that's worth it often depends on how different the documents are. If they're completely different, then when you read them in, you usually get a mess, and then you have to clean up that mess. A short answer is we're happy to do that for you if it would help. And if you get enough CVs that are sort of similar enough, that I think that would really benefit you. And if you get completely different things from every person, I don't know if you're going to be happy with the results.
Yeah, understood. I've used something similar and I know it can be very funky. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to talk over you. Jen, I think you have a good idea, a good thought process there, because people have to put their, mentee, mentor information in their biobid, right, for academic personnel. So yeah, that would be interesting if it could somehow glean that information, right? And
Even if sorry, Jill, didn't mean to talk over you this time. Um, even if there was maybe one format you wanted it in that we could easily cut and paste what we get. As opposed to maybe entering it one at a time. I don't know again what that would look like, but I know it's really hard for me to get things from faculty in any other format than they already have it.
Yes. Well, I don't know if this is helpful or if you're allowed to share that information with me, but if you want to, you can send us a couple of examples and we could take a look at them.
Okay, thank you.
and Adam, sorry, I don't mean to drag it out, but so something like this, like you're willing to work with us and say, okay, we can make these changes based on recommendations. I mean, I don't know how big of a staff you guys have. Like, say if we say, hey, this isn't working for us, how like collaborative can we be as opposed, how much input can we give for changes in the system or whatnot?
Yes, that's a great question. So I think there are two answers. They both boil down to we can be as collaborative as you want, and you can tell us any feedback that you want. And then the two categories are probably if you're coming up with ideas for features or changes that would really benefit the entire community of everybody who's using the system, then we will probably just go ahead and add those. And my goal would be to add them quickly. If you're asking for things that are really custom or specific to your university, can you connect to this database and pull in this information? We're also happy to do that. But in that case, we would not necessarily do it for free. it would be potentially an additional customization charges. I did the quick overview. I can see if there's anything else that might be useful, but that might be the good stuff from my side. So I can wait and see if you guys have other questions or thoughts.
So like I have a question on table 3.
Mhm.
So on our campus we have 50 training grants. So would I put in all that data on those 50 training grants? And like I have a list of all the overlapping faculty. So could we import all that? And then if I put in table 1, or I'm sorry, table 2, if I add in all our faculty members, then it would automatically know what other, oh, you're not, okay, they're already on, such and such 5 other training grants. It would tally that up for you, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, yeah, and the way that we typically do that is when you're pulling that information in, what we would prefer that you add is some sort of unique ID. So their institutional ID, their email address, something that uniquely identifies them. And if you do that, then we can easily correlate across all the faculty members and all the grants to see who are overlapping faculty and who's on which grants. If you don't have that, if you don't have a unique identifier you can add, we can try to talk about other options, but it does get a little bit trickier at that point.
Okay. Jen, did you have a question?
Yeah, so it's for this table, I want to kind of know this in general, but how does this table get that information? Like if it has our faculty names, Joe Smith, Dr. Joe Smith, where does it go out to get the other training grants? Does it need to hook in with our university's like grants people, or does it go to NIH Reporter, or does it go, or do we have to input that somewhere? Because I know you mentioned the data warehouse, is that what you
Mhm.
called it? And I
Yes,
guess
yes.
I'm not too sure what that term means.
Sure. I'm sorry. I know that's a little bit more of a technical one.
Yeah,
Perhaps I can
that's
think of a better
okay.
one. So we do have access to pull data directly from Reporter.
Okay.
And the concept of data warehouse is basically saying if you have internal systems of record at your institution, we can set up a way to pull data from that system.
Into
We
your
we
system.
didn't think of it directly as a direct API or integration because often what we find is that universities have data in 5 or 6 different systems. So it's been more beneficial to pull that into a centralized
Got it.
place, which we call data warehouse,
Okay.
before we pull it into the
Okay.
system.
So, I work at the Cancer Center at UCSF, and we use a database called eval, which is very specific to cancer centers. But all this information is in there. So you're saying if you were given access to that, it would pull it in, and then we could sort it into these tables as
That's
an
right.
example.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and usually it just takes a little extra work because we need to get access to it. The system might need VPN access, credentials, and then we need to figure out where exactly in your system each bit of data is. And then once we have that all mapped, we can pull it in here.
Okay. And that's sort of the true across all the different tables. It's just coming from different data
That's right.
sources. Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
So, Adam, okay, so like for this, the overlapping faculty, and particularly for table 3, like I actually track that. You can get the grant data out of NH Reporter, but to know who's on which grants, I mean, that's all specific to the grant application. So I'm like a data steward at our campus, so I could give you that information. You could put it up in the data warehouse. But what about table 4, like an API? Do you guys usually have an API with, NH Reporter? Um, how do you guys normally build that out? Would you connect to our financial systems, our grant systems, and on the campus? And how has that in the past? Has that been a smooth process for you? Like say at Duke? I know that is one of a hurdle at UCSD anyway, is trying to get access to all the things that you need to. Do you know what I mean? And that you would be an outside vendor, so I'm just curious to see what your experience is with that.
Yeah, I think that we've had different experience with it depending on what the IT landscape looks like at different universities, and also depending on sort of who's pushing the program. Sometimes people are saying we really want this, and everybody in IT security says, well, we don't really care. You can put it at the end of the list, and it'll take a while. And there's other places where you know the dean of the graduate department is saying this is a priority. We need more T32s and we need it to take less time. And then it happens pretty quickly. They say, figure out what needs to happen in terms of security and just make it happen. So I have definitely seen both.
And then another addendum on that. So do you use an API for Table 4 data to pull from like NSF or NIH?
Yeah, so for grant and funding information, at the moment we have Reporter, Federal Reporter, and if there are other sources that you think might be useful that we can get access to, we're happy to add those as well.
And then it's kind of skipping around here. No, I'm like, can we go back? I interrupted you like 20 minutes ago, I think. Can we go back to the table 5? I'd like to see how you kind of gather the data from PubMed on that.
Okay, so oh yeah, let me do that one. I don't have any publications pulled in just yet. So when you come here and go to PubMed, at the moment, we have the ability to put in authors. I spelled that wrong. I should pick somebody with an easier name. As I mentioned, we already have in here the research organization registry organization name, which helps me filter it to the correct organization. You can also search by particular PMC IDs, journals, the year of the publication. We also can add more search fields over time. We were just getting this up and running. But once you've done your search and found the relevant publications, I like the idea. I don't know how well it works in practice of just putting in the authors that you care about, the organization name, and saying, yep, take all of them and hit import and you're done. You could always do that and then remove them individually, or if you just need a few of them, you can select the ones that you're interested in.
I find if you search by the trainee and then mentor, usually those are pretty on task. I mean, as far
Combination.
as
Yep.
as far as being correct. So yeah, having a place where you can add 2 authors,
Yep.
that would be great.
You can do that.
So yeah, if you could show us like what it looks like if you import them and then like saying, oh wait, no, this one's not good. We can just cross it off.
Or come back to that part in a second. Okay, so let me go back to the dashboard just so you're oriented. We're here on the dashboard. We have side navigation. We also have this navigation here for managed data. So if I click in either of those places on publications, it shows me a list of publications which have been added to this particular T32 grant application. So some of these are kind of blank that I had in there already or I had imported previously. And then a few of these are the ones that we just imported. So if you want to, you can always view the list of them. If you say, no, I don't want that one, you can just click the little trash can and it'll remove it from your grant application. Or if you find something that's incorrect about it or you want to change the way it appears, you can just hit the edit button and it'll change it here. And then this is true for all of these. When you're managing the data in these sections, it could be used in any number of tables depending on what the data is. And if you modify a publication, say in this list, it's updated in all of the tables where it appears.
Now, does the system keep track? So since you've added those 3 publications between potentially this mentor and this trainee, does it then store that relationship between the mentor and the trainee, or before that mentor for that trainee? Or do you have to repeat this process for every application?
Oh, do you mean when so if I do a grant application and then a year later I'm doing another grant application, is that right? Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. So there's a couple of concepts there. Right now, this piece that we're looking at, each bit of data is related just to that grant application. So that has some benefits and some downsides. The benefit is I can modify data in another grant application, nothing changes here. Um, there are two other options. One, we are currently talking about building a feature that would let you copy chunks of data from one grant application to another. So you could start a new one and say, hey, I want to take all the faculty members from the last one, or I want to take all of the faculty members except for these two from the last one. I think that'll get you most of the way there. The other thing that we've done in the past is set up a separate component of Curvita that acts as we called it a faculty profile management system. And this is intended to be a system of record for anybody who doesn't have a system of record for particular bits of data. So the idea is we had two different components. One, you may already have a system of record. We can link to those. We can set up a system of record. And then separately, sort of a separate component is the piece that just focuses on doing grant applications. And they can work together, but we sort of thought of them as separate pieces in part to help things prevent from getting too confusing.
Thank you. And so the system of record is more like like a like a customer management system in format.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So, it looks a lot like this section where you can manage faculty member information. But it's intended to be across all, it's intended to be the current data, whereas the grant management system is going to have snapshots of data of different people at different times over the past. It's going to have the tables attached. The faculty profile management system also can have other capabilities, like sometimes universities would like to have a sort of a public faculty directory where some subset of their profile becomes public, shows which department they're in, what their current research interests are, those types of things. So we have some other capabilities where we can use it for broader purposes than just generating grants.
Great, thank you.
And we do have something like that, UC profiles for all the UC campuses, I believe. It could show, everything from, the research, to, gosh, I can't even think now. But yes, it's a lot of that data.
Yeah, and so what we did is we built that sort of as separate components because we found that some people had that and some people didn't. And what that means is if you do have that, that could also be a potential system of record where we could give you the ability to come in here, you're working on your grant application, you reach out to, what did you call it, USC profiles?
UC profiles, yeah.
You pull up a page, it shows UC profiles, click a few checkboxes, import all the data that's relevant and go from there.
I had a couple of other questions in regards to integration with Extract. So if you're familiar with Extract, so that is the online NIH. You have to log in to fill in all this data online on their system, and then you upload it. So this doesn't look like it would be able to be mass uploaded. I mean, I guess you could do some, like you could do table 4, you could do data table sources, and mass uploads of trainees. But I have a feeling that is not the purpose. I mean, the intent, right? You would just download them as they come out of your system, right? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, that's been the intent. Whenever that becomes useful enough, that I think that's something that we would look at. If the NIH makes it easier to automate these submissions, at some point we could have a way to just, it would be easy for us to have a button where it sends it all to the NIH. They don't have a place to send it all, so we don't have that yet. But we're happy to look at that kind of thing. But you're right about the sort of the current intent at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great to have a system to system, system where, we could pull all this data very quickly and we don't have to upload it or input it into Extract. But luckily it's still an option for renewals and new grants. So you don't have to use it. But the one thing I like about Extract is that then if there's admin turnover, all your information is there, So that kind of segues to trainee information. So with trainees, I'm sure you're aware that we're supposed to track them for 15 years. So you could be building up a lot of trainees, right, in your system. And so is it possible to, and it says it sounds like you can send out like an alert to a trainee, and say, hey, can you fill in your information, which would be fantastic. But what about like reporting? Like, could we just instead not just tables, but could we just do run different types of reports on trainees? I mean, would that be possible in your system?
Yes. What I'll say is we don't have that kind of reporting functionality just built in there today, but I think it's a great idea and seems like it would be useful. So we have the data. It would be relatively easy, I think, to add some reports on top of things so you can get access to that.
Okay, that'd be great. Does anybody else have questions? Oh, actually, there's a question from the chat. Can you um pull information out of like X-Train, which is in Area Commons, which is behind like a password protected?
We did start to take a look at that, and I think that's something that we would be happy to consider. The password protection sort of did make it harder and is a reason why it's not in there just yet. But we were looking at different options for that. So, what I think I would say is when I have an update, I can send you more information about what we found. And if it's possible, then we'll certainly let you know that as well.
Um, yeah, because I think it's a very interesting yeah, anyway, sorry. So we have another question from Hector. Does this work just for the data tables, or he's asking about like the narrative sections of the T32, the program plan. You don't put all of that in there and it puts everything together. But you did mention bio sketches, which is an interesting thing because they're also changing that pretty soon. But I mean, yeah, if do you have any plans to do that, or do you already do that?
Yeah, we don't currently. I'm happy to do that. The narrative stuff seems relatively easy. I think we haven't, so it almost is like why haven't we bothered yet? But on the other hand, what we have focused on are the parts that have been really, really challenging for people. So that's been our primary focus. And I think we included the bio sketches because we have this wealth of information about all of these people and their publications and their grants. And so being able to generate those rather than, I think in some cases you're getting somebody sending you the biosketch, which is great. We have the ability to upload biosketches. If somebody sends them to you, you can use those. But having to take all that data and manually create them was another sort of overwhelming task. So we have worked on that so far. And again, we haven't done the narrative portion, but we're happy to do that if it's helpful. Maybe one bit of background in case it helps in terms of why I'm saying some of these things this way about what we have and haven't done. What we had done prior to COVID is we did these institutional setups, which I talked about. So we were working with a small handful of universities. We would go and spend a lot of time at each one and install things on servers and get integrations going. That was great. That was our whole focus. And then COVID hit, we focused on COVID. COVID ended, and then we started to hear more of a demand and a need more broadly. And so now is when we have started to sort of take this to a bigger market. And I think that's when we're seeing a need for more diversity of features as well, like the ones you're bringing up.
Yeah, because kind of the next question from Hector was like workflow. Could you do your whole grant, have that like, I guess you say almost project manage your grant, right? You can create calendars, you can say, hey, this is when we're meeting, assign tasks to people, that kind of functionality, which would be really cool, actually.
This is a great idea. Hector, I think that we should talk more, or we should get you on board or something, because you're full of great ideas and
He
these are things
is.
that we would love
He is.
to put in there.
I put in a grant with him and he's a sharp one. Um, so any other questions? I know I have more questions. I can't spit them all out quick enough with my ADHD. But I can open it up. Does anybody else have ideas, questions, concerns?
I think opening up is great. I'll also say if you're, if you need more time to think about it and think of questions later, you're free to feel free to contact us anytime. We can set up another meeting or just talk on email.
Adam, I assume you guys are aware that I think as of January, they're making some tweaks to the table, so that's all integrated, the change.
Yes.
All right.
Yep. We're staying on top of that as the announcements come out. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. In drips and drabs, I've noticed. As I'm working on some tables now, I'm like, anytime now, anytime.
It feels a little late,
Yeah,
especially for us, but what can we do? That's our job, is to keep it up to date. So
okay.
Yeah, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse too much, but we're a very interesting, unique concept here because we have 10 different campuses, but we have like University of the President, which is here. And if we got approval to do this, we're not sure exactly how, would all the campuses need it? Would
mhm.
they use it? I think there are more different, like UCSF, UCLA, Davis, us. We are very, Berkeley, very interested. But you might get the Merced where they're like, "Hey, I got one grant." It doesn't, it's not a huge administrative burden to us. So yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to talk about that and negotiate, um, how that would work, right? Because we all use the same HR system, but we all have different financial systems.
Mhm.
So it gets a little murky with the UC system, I've noticed.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I think that makes sense. I don't know how it would play out in reality. Um, and it might be that it's not worth it for some of the smaller universities. But also, I could imagine a situation where whatever components you do have shared could be a benefit to them. And maybe that means that it helps them with 30% of it, the grant, instead of 100%. I mean, that could be fine. So I think that they could benefit from the pieces that you're putting in place, I guess.
another component, that's what something else we want to do. Part of this consortium is we want to help the UC Merceds, not to pick on them. My daughter goes there, so I'll pick on her, but we want them to grow, right? We would love to see them get more training grants. So, the schools that aren't as active right now, if this could help them in any way as well, that would be great.
Yeah.
Um, one other thing. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Jill, I can wait till after your question.
No, 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 go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Adam, for all my questions. But I did just actually think of one about the publications. So we do like that database that I was telling you about is also integrated with PubMed and pulls it in. But then we have, it just goes by names, like you were saying, you can search for names, but then there's always this manual step where we have to go and make sure that the John Doe we searched for is the John Doe on our training grant. And I was curious, what do you have with your publications that help us do that? Like, does it have, I mean, org IDs is one way, but does it have institutions that they're with? Like, if I needed to go in and make sure that, one of these folks, the Lou Y or
Mhm.
Ziegler CK was my person, what would I look at to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one answer, I think the main answer that we have in place at the moment is this piece that I mentioned earlier, where when you are searching for publications, you can indicate that it has to be affiliated with a specific organization. I think that will help narrow it down quite a bit. It might not work for everything, right? Because you can have certainly multi-institution publications. So I don't know that I have a better answer at the moment, but I can think about that a little bit and see if we can come up with anything. And also, I think if you have any ideas along the way, you can definitely share them with us, and we'd be happy to see if we can add those as well.
Okay, that the ROR organization, does that imply, is that their current organization that they're currently working at?
I think they're listed in PubMed based on the organization at the time the publication was made.
That's exactly true. Yeah, you can click down and drill down, and it'll say all the institutions that were involved with that publication.
But it's by author, isn't it, Jill? Like you can look at each author and it'll say where that author's at, or is that not correct?
Uh, where they're currently at?
Yes.
Not where they're currently at, wherever they were when
And they
they
publish the, okay.
they published it. I mean, let me double check. I haven't been there in a little while.
Because Adam, what is, as far as ideas for you, if, yeah, I guess if there was a way to, in that field that says organization, if there was maybe a way to put more than one, like if you knew they were at UCSF and
Hmm.
you knew before that they were at UC Berkeley, and then it would look somehow figure out if those people, if that author had ever been,
Yes.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
currently at, or ever was at
Mhm.
those, one of those organizations.
Got it. Yeah. So be able to include past institutions
Yeah,
as well, basically. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great idea. And
it's a
that
real
should.
challenge. I mean, yeah, the way we do it, it really is a manual. We have one poor person who has to go through one by one. So it doesn't seem like anyone has a great solution, because especially if you have a common name, it's a tough
Mhm.
one.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I can look through the data, the raw data that we get back from PubMed, and see if it gives us discrete information about each individual author and their organization. Because we could easily, if that is true, we could grab it and show it. So perhaps either we could flag things with a warning if we're not sure, or at least have a list that you could look through that would just already be there. You don't have to go looking all over the place. So I don't remember exactly what that data looks like off the top of my head, but I can take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? We're like 12 minutes before the top of the hour. Everyone gets shy when it comes to Zoom. It's like, I don't want to ask a question.
That's all right. It's perhaps we answered all of them.
I know,
Um,
right? Adam, that's a good way to look at it. You're that good.
and perhaps, if not, you guys are always welcome, like I said, to shoot us an email.
Yeah, and I was just kind of like looking at your pricing online. It was kind of interesting because it says individual, $175 a month. That would be for one program or one grant on a campus. And
Yes, yes.
institutional would be different, interdepartmental. Okay.
Yeah, we sort of tried to focus on the scale. So there are places, entire universities that only have one T32 or have zero and are applying for one. Maybe it's just one PI doing it by him or herself. And then there are other places, as you know, that have dozens of training grants and centralized offices and teams. And yeah, I think the goal is to try to make sure that the value matches and that the smaller institutions have the ability to use it as well.
Yeah, I think the thing that it is unique about the UC campuses is as far as all the training grants in the nation, we have about 10% of them between all of our campuses. So for your standpoint, like you could actually learn a lot from us, right?
Mhm.
We could bring a lot to the table. Trying to get a negotiated cheaper price. Is that if you understand what I'm doing here? But there's a lot we could teach you as far as tips and tricks and stuff like that that you could bring that value to other institutions as well, or your whole system. So
For sure. And I mean, hopefully you can tell we're listening. We're listening for what kinds of features would make it easy. I think we have a great understanding of how difficult it is to put these together, and the goal is to find as many ways as we can to make it easier. So we can think of things, but you guys are on the ground doing it every day too. So you certainly have plenty of ideas.
and then one other question that just popped in my head again, the ADHD. Bio sketches. So you're currently doing that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a quick sample you could show us? I'd be kind of curious to see because that's something else, the NIH is changing. Um, they're always changing that.
Don't know how much information I have on this grant. Let me take a look and hopefully this will all work. Let me take a look at this one. Okay. So, which one? So if I grab the bio sketch for this person, it's going to generate it on the fly, generate a Microsoft Word document, and let me open that. And I think that the bio sketches don't look beautiful, but they look like this. And the other thing is we have, as you may have seen earlier, sort of a templating system. So what we can do is we can just generate a different template if you want things to look different. And then we would pop the same data in whatever the template looks like.
Can you even write the whole personal statement for the PI? Because that seems to be a difficult thing sometimes. I'm sorry, I was just kidding. Yeah, we got a couple PIs on the
We
line.
can throw it through some a large language model and see what comes out if you like.
Actually, yeah, there you go. We can, well, and that is something a lot of these the parent T32s I know, well, especially the specific FOAs, like they want specific language in that state in personal statement. And sometimes it's just boilerplate, right? It's just the
Mhm.
same language, they change it around just a little bit, but it all has to be in there. So cool.
Yep.
Hey, anybody else? 253. So shy.
There's one in the chat, Jill.
Find my chat. Okay, last question. Is it possible to draft an entire RPPR renewal straight from the software? So it doesn't sound like you can do it for a renewal, right, from the narrative sections, but the RPPR, I mean, that would be an interesting thing in the future if you could, have your trainees log in on into, you're doing an RPPR, they can add in their information. The PI can log in, add in their information. The admin can go in and do the data tables and you collate it. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. So at the moment, we have a lot of tools that you could kind of use independently to generate a renewal that would be easier from doing it without the system. We don't have a lot of features that are really just built directly for that use case as sort of as a workflow. But I think that's another thing that we are considering as we move forward.
And Adam, if you don't mind me asking, like, how big is your team? And sometimes you see people on the website, and you think, oh, they got like 100 people behind the scenes, but sometimes it's three. So just curious, how big of a team do you have?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know what's considered small. Given those numbers, we're on the smaller side. We've got about 15 people here. And I'll say I'm very proud of them. We're rocking and rolling and doing a ton of work on many, many different projects with those people. So we get a lot done with that. Yep.
Cool, cool. And then would you be able to like provide references? Like, could we talk to someone at Duke that uses the system on a daily basis, or someone from another university?
Yeah, I can give you some references. I will say that some of the core people that we've worked with have retired since before COVID. But I'm happy to give you some names and references anyways. And some of the folks who are retired might be willing to chat with you anyways.
Okay, cool. Not to put you like on the spot, but
I think it's certainly a fair question. It's a great question. Yep.
And then we
Oh,
have
there's
another
another
question,
question.
Hector.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm telling you, Hector and Matthew, they're going to be like running this university pretty soon. Are there user roles and permissions? Like, is there as a faculty, administrator, grant writer, etc.?
Yeah, so we do have some users and user roles and permissions built into the system. And also we have sort of a framework to allow us to add more roles over time. So we don't have things that are quite as concrete as those. We have an administrator role, and that allows you to do things across all the grant applications and also do things like user management and that type of thing. We have I would say grant writer is sort of our standard role. Faculty member is not a role on its own. With faculty members, we have two options. One, you can give them sort of the grant writer role, which would give them the same access to the across all the tables and all the data. The other option is we have the ability to send those emails directly to a faculty member, which allows them to update just their own information, their own grants, their own publications, their own, specific to them. So that's what we have right now. And I think if we find that there's use cases for other types of roles, we can talk about those as well.
Okay, cool. Okay, 2:57. So I'm going to go ahead and do last call for questions. No? Yeah, if you want to stay on for a little bit, Adam, we could chat a little bit.
Sure, that sounds great.
If you don't mind, if you don't have a 3 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys. It was nice to meet all of you.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trying to do. Yes. Okay. I don't want to share screen. I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, I love it, Adam. Thank you. I appreciate it. And Kaylee, you guys were great. This is very exciting. So I'm gonna go back to the consortium, our executive team, and then we'll have to have a chat, of course, and then we can, you know, yeah, I think that I don't know. Otherwise, I don't know the other next steps. So.
That seems perfectly reasonable. I appreciate you taking the time to look at it and also to invite us on and talk through it. We're hoping that it'll be beneficial, and we're certainly happy to have a chance to talk with you.
And where do you live with those beautiful trees in the background?
Thank you. So I'm in Durham, North Carolina.
Oh, you are in Durham.
Yeah.
Okay. And you guys
Just a little bit
survived.
north, near the river that goes through. I'm very lucky to be here. So
But because I have a very good friend that lives in Hendersonville.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they didn't have she works at UCSD. She lives out there. Yeah, they didn't have power for a week. And she was supposed to fly into Asheville, and they're like, yep, that's not happening. It's
It was
crazy.
rough. The hurricane really was awful. And then yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad. It sounds like she's doing okay. Maybe
Yeah.
power out, but hopefully okay.
She's got the Starlink, so she's happy. So, but anyway, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and we'll be in touch.
All right, great. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Joe.
Bye bye.